If one day, the United States, the world's leading power, suddenly walked down the altar, stop being the world's police officer, what are the consequences? For many little brothers who rely on America, this is no laughing matter. Today we are going to talk about 3 countries. Once you lose the United States as your backer, they are likely to be in danger of extinction immediately. Especially the one at number 1. Because along the way, I have made countless enemies. It can be said that it offended the world. International relations is a bit like rivers and lakes. America is the big brother who takes care of a bunch of younger brothers. If one day the big brother quits, those who rely on him, I'm afraid I'll be surrounded by enemies soon. On weekdays, the big brother supports the back. Little brothers are full of confidence when dealing with people. But once the big brother falls, these little brothers will immediately change from overlord to soft. Persimmons can be pinched by anyone. So we're going to go through all of these. How did these 3 people risk their lives? It's all on America. The 3rd place in Korea. Don't watch Korean idol dramas. Pop music is all over the world. But the security of this country, largely dependent on the United States as an umbrella company. Once you lose the United States as your backer, the fate of South Korea is probably better than the plot of Korean dramas and twists and turns. And it can be pretty sad. How dependent is South Korea's defense on the United States? Since the Korean War in the early 1950s, the U.S. military has been stationed in the southern part of the Korean peninsula, helping South Korea fend off the threat from the north. It is no exaggeration to say, if the United States hadn't sent troops that year, South Korea may have been involved in that war earlier. It's gone. Until today. There are also around 28,000 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea, provided by the United States, not only advanced weaponry and military training. More importantly, it propped up a nuclear umbrella company for South Korea, that is, with the nuclear power of the United States. The next group, North Korea, dare not act rashly, you know? The temper of the North Korean leader is fleeting. Test fire missiles in 3 days, celebrate a holiday or something, without the U.S. military on the sidelines. I'm afraid Koreans can't sleep well at night. After all, it's across the 38th parallel. North Korea deploys thousands of artillery pieces. Korean capital circle could be shrouded in artillery fire at any time, not to mention that North Korea still has nuclear weapons in its hands. South Korea doesn't have a nuclear bomb. We can only rely on Huey society in the United States to stand up for yourself. However, South Korea's troubles do not only come from the north. He's literally sandwiched between 2 big guys. Dilemma. On one hand, the Korean economy is highly dependent on foreign exports. The largest trading partner is China next door. On the other hand, he is safe, and it's inseparable from the American alliance half a world away. Friends, as a result, Korea wants to please both sides, but often the inside and outside are not human. For example, previous years, South Korea agrees to allow the United States to deploy within its borders. That anti-missile system. China is furious. Economic retaliation against South Korea. Chinese tourists don't come if they don't come. All the shows of Korean celebrities have been removed from the shelves in China. Korean companies operating in China have been suppressed in various ways. Korea just found out. Offended a neighbor close at hand. How serious are the consequences? This shows that, if one day America really doesn't work, and China has become the undisputed superpower, life in Korea will get very sad. Or he has to bite the bullet and steer towards China, compromise and give up some principles of autonomy, or stick to the pro-American position. But then, you have to withstand various pressures from China, even revenge. Dilemma. It's worrying which way to choose. And here's the trickier part. Except for North Korea and China, South Korea and another neighbor, the relationship with Japan is also very small. Wonderful historical grievances and territorial disputes. Let South Korea always be wary of Japan. There used to be America in the middle. South Korea and Japan can still cooperate superficially, jointly addressing the North Korean threat. Once America's influence in East Asia fades, Japan may accelerate its military buildup, become a military power that can stand alone. At that time, South Korea will have to worry about missiles from the north. Beware of Japanese warships to the east. Pressure can be imagined. Imagine if the United States actually withdrew its troops from South Korea. North Korea may have immediately sensed an opportunity. Maybe one morning, sirens on the front lines of Panmunjom suddenly resounded through the sky. North Korean tanks roar across the 38th parallel, straight to the south of the Han River. The South Korean capital city immediately fell into extreme panic. The South Korean government is calling for help. The president quickly called the United Nations, but in addition to repeated calls for restraint on both sides, there was no action. There is no American backer. South Korea can only fight alone. How bad is the ending? Maybe eventually, South Korea's painstakingly free society will be covered by red flags to the north. The reunification of the Korean peninsula, but that would be in the most brutal way. Not only does it depend on America for safety, South Korea's economic prosperity, it is also inseparable from the international order maintained by the United States. South Korea is a classic export-oriented economy. Samsung phone, Hyundai car, LG TVs and more. It's all sold around the world to make a lot of money. Over the past few decades, the US-led free trade system and stable sea lanes let South Korea hitch a ride on globalization. But if American hegemony is not there, international trade rules are being reshuffled. Korea, those export markets and supply chains that have been painstakingly established, it can be broken at any time, let alone a real conflict. Interruption of maritime transportation. South Korean freighters will be unable to move an inch. The economy would be devastated. The thorn is that there are also many voices in Korea advocate for getting rid of dependence on the United States. Achieve true autonomous defense. We'll have to wait until the Americans leave. No backer. These people will find out. It turns out that the stable life of the family, all thanks to America. Once you experience firsthand that North Korean missiles are overhead, the taste of whizzing by, they probably won't laugh anymore. It is worth mentioning that some people in South Korea also believe that, rather than forever relying on US nuclear protection, it's better to secretly develop your own nuclear weapons, to grasp the last life-saving chip, especially in North Korea, spurred by successive nuclear tests. This claim has occasionally surfaced in recent years. However, once South Korea really embarks on the path of Yonghae, not only is it a flagrant violation of international treaties, it will also inevitably lead to a regional arms race, strongly opposed by neighboring countries. After all, this is when South Korea is cornered. It's a risky gamble. So there is no US follow. Korea is like a flower in a greenhouse, suddenly exposed to severe storms. And look at the neon lights on the streets of Seoul. A bustling. Once the US troops withdraw, allies are not available. The Korean script will probably change from a romantic idol drama, instantly turned into a brutal survival game. The second place is Taiwan, which can be said to be in the spotlight, step by step. Much attention? It's because of this little island. Owns the world's most advanced chip factory. Let all countries look at him differently. Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. Just across the sea. They were in a very tense standoff. Worry about misfire at any time. Review history. Taiwan can survive until today. To a large extent, it depends on the United States to help again and again. The Korean War broke out in 1950. President Truman dispatched the 7th Fleet, entry into the Taiwan Strait, to stop the Chinese mainland. The plan to liberate Taiwan by force. After that, the United States broke off diplomatic relations with Taiwan in 1979. Instead, he recognized the Beijing regime, but soon passed the Taiwan Relations Act, continued to ensure that the United States will assist Taiwan in its self-defense, both during and after the Cold War. The Taiwan issue has always been a Sino-US issue, one of the focuses of the wrestling. The United States has asked whether to send troops directly to defend Taiwan. It's been strategic ambiguity, not explicitly dead, but actually, the United States through continued military assistance. He has always played the role of the patron saint of Taiwan. It can be said that the United States is the greatest pillar of Taiwan's security, even in the peacetime years following the end of the Cold War. Once the tensions in the Taiwan Strait escalate, America will not stand idly by. 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis. Chinese mainland test missiles to move Taiwan. The United States immediately dispatched an aircraft carrier battle group, entering the waters near Taiwan, forcibly suppressed the situation. However, even with the backing of the United States behind it, Taiwan still walks on thin ice every day, because the opponent he is facing is too powerful. Today, the military strength of the Chinese People's Liberation Army is not what it used to be. Army, Navy, and Air Force, and missile firepower far exceed that of Taiwan. For example, the number of active Chinese fighter jets exceeds 1,500, and Taiwan, all combat-ready fighter jets add up less than 300. It's a world apart. Taiwan side, although it is also equipped with many advanced weapons, the morale of the officers and soldiers is commendable, but they were outnumbered. Really have to fight alone. The results are not optimistic. The situation across the Taiwan Strait has become increasingly tense in recent years. PLA military planes circle Taiwan almost every day to cover up news. The threat of war is like a cloud, hovering over Taiwan. Although most Taiwanese people still pretend to be calm, living a normal life. Go to the night market after work. Drinking milk tea is business as usual. But everyone knows. How fragile is this peace every day? Home can only hit channels. There are records to come around us today. Eat and sleep tomorrow. But what if it really starts someday? Taiwanese people, the reason why you can still maintain your apparent calmness, it's very much about believing in critical moments. America will come out to prevent the worst from happening. If one day America no longer works, this calmness may collapse immediately. Think about it. If the United States stops interfering in the situation in the Taiwan Strait, Chinese mainland is bound to Taiwan, more intense pressure, maybe even use force. Once you get to that point, Taiwan is in danger of being completely blocked by sea and air. Until then, electronic products and the chip can't be shipped out. The food and energy that Taiwan itself depends on. I'm afraid it will be difficult to ship in. At that time, the missiles of the People's Liberation Army will be pouring at the airport in Taiwan. Radar station and command center. The Taiwanese Air Force rose to meet the enemy. The enemy is outnumbered. Air power was soon taken over by the People's Liberation Army. Then, the landing ship of the People's Liberation Army. The team made a forced landing along the coastline. Large numbers of troops have poured into Taiwan's main island. Although the Taiwanese army resisted bravely, but losing, fierce gunfire rang out in the city streets. The brightly lit Taipei night sky on weekdays. Now there is only fire and smoke left. Taiwan leader, a final distress message to the international community. But without the backing of the United States, the response was nothing but sympathy and condemnation. But I can't hear the footsteps of reinforcements setting foot on this land. Taiwan currently has more than a dozen diplomatic relations, mostly with the backing of the United States. It has not established diplomatic relations with Beijing. If the United States loses its influence, Taiwan may suddenly fall into a desperate situation of zero diplomatic relations, total diplomatic isolation. Even more lethal is the threat of military attack. If the People's Liberation Army decides that the United States will not help, that's like letting go of your hands and feet. Do your best to launch a unified war. No matter how brave the Taiwanese army is, can't resist a super for a long time. An all-out attack by a major power. At that time, this island is likely to be consumed by war. Usher in the end he least wants to face. Free fall. Homeowner. Some people might say, isn't there a Taiwan-level store in protective Shenzhen? So many chips in the world depend on it. Isn't China afraid to smash these factories? Triggering a major setback for the global technology industry. It certainly is. Taiwan relies on the importance of its own chip industry. This is what's called the shielding effect. Make all countries unwilling to go to war in the Taiwan Strait. But Guyton can make a difference. There is a premise. It is the United States that must continue to be the world's police officer. Strive to maintain peace across the Taiwan Strait. Otherwise, once the chip supply chain is doomed to disrupt, I'm afraid the Chinese mainland will think it's better to do things. It is better to preemptively solve the Taiwan issue. For Beijing, the chip is destroyed. Goodbye chance to unify. If you miss it, it's gone. What's more, there are over 20 million people in Taiwan. We are accustomed to a life of democracy and freedom. It is not conscious to ask them to submit to Beijing's rule. It's doomed. The Taiwan Strait issue is difficult to resolve through compromise. In addition to cross-strait tensions, Taiwan's geostrategic location, it also made him incredibly important. The United States will take Taiwan as a crucial link in the first island chain. There is Taiwan, the United States, and its allies in the Western Pacific block the Chinese Navy's eastward route. But if Taiwan leads to the mainland, there will be a huge gap in the first island chain. The Chinese Navy can drive straight into the heart of the Pacific Ocean. At that time, the influence of the United States in the Asia-Pacific region will be discount. The entire strategic landscape of Asia will change dramatically. Because of this, the United States will never let go of Taiwan easily. Then again, America is not monolithic. Many people question, is it worth it for Taiwan and China? Soldiers meet. After all, that means direct conflict with another nuclear power. However, if one day the United States itself cannot be guaranteed, other countries may not dare to go head-to-head for Taiwan. China, Japan. Countries such as Australia may sympathize with Taiwan's situation, but without the United States taking the lead, no one dares to be the first to stand up. Go head-to-head with China. In the end, Taiwan is likely to be reduced to a great power game, a discarded pawn, alone. How long he can weigh is an unknown. The recent invasion of Ukraine, it also touched many Taiwanese people. They look at Ukraine with Western support. Struggling, I can't help but think that if the Taiwan Strait erupts one day, soldiers don't know how the world will react. Of course, in the face of existential crisis, Taiwan is not sitting still either. In recent years, they have actively strengthened their self-defense capabilities. For example, purchase more air defense and anti-ship weapons from the United States, developing their own Great Wall missiles and submarines. Even extended the conscript service to 1 year. Quite a few. The young man who thought he didn't have to be a soldier. Hearing the news, I can only put down the gamepad with a wry smile. Go and prepare to be a soldier. Taiwan does this. The goal is to arm yourself as a hedgehog. Even without foreign aid, it can also cost the invaders dearly. Taiwan is also seeking ways to expand international support, strengthening ties with Japan, Europe, and other regions. Minimize your dependence on one American company. However, after all, these efforts cannot change a reality. Taiwan is too close to the Chinese mainland, and the strength gap between the two sides is too great. It's really an existential moment. Without the backing of a superpower like the United States, Taiwan may not escape the fate of being annexed or destroyed. Hope for such darkness. The moment never comes. Otherwise, this beautiful treasure island may be silenced in the storms of history. There's a joke about Israel and the Middle East. God gave the Middle East oil. Also to the Middle East Israel. Visible, how unique Israel is in the Middle East. The size of a palm. The narrowest point from east to west is less than 20 kilometers wide. Few true friends around. But there is a circle of opponents who hate him to the core. Israel has been able to survive in such a dangerous environment to this day. To a large extent, relying on the superbacker of the United States, a steady stream of support. The State of Israel was founded in the aftermath of World War II. In 1948, Israel declared independence. The next day, the 5 surrounding Arab countries contacted. Han declared war on him is to bring the nascent Jewish state drive into the sea. That time, with the determination of all Israelis, and some foreign aid, barely repelled the enemy. But in the days that followed, Israel, almost always, in the shadow of war and conflict. Cold War, the Middle East has become the stage for the US and the Soviet Union to stand. Some Arab countries are oriented towards the Soviet Union. Israel is firmly on the side of the United States. From the Six-Day War in 1967, the Yom Kippur War in 1973, every time Israel faces an existential crisis, US aid will quickly follow, helping Israel get through this difficult time. Especially in 1973, Egypt and Syria jointly attack Israel. The Israeli army suffered heavy losses at the beginning. Critical moment. The United States launched a massive airlift operation. A steady stream of arms and ammunition shipments to Israel helped Israel stabilize its front, finally turn the tide. It is said that the Prime Minister of Israel was ready. Last resort. Use nuclear weapons to burn jade and stone. If the United States hadn't come to the rescue, the history of the Middle East may be rewritten until today. The United States' support for Israel, still all-round beauty. The state grants Israel up to more than $3 billion in military assistance. Help them procure the most advanced weapons and equipment. The Israeli Air Force's F-35 stealth fighter jets. It was first provided to him by the United States, the Patriot missile defense system deployed by Israel. It was also established with the assistance of the United States, or the proud Iron Dome of Israel. Rocket interception system, with funding and technical support from the United States, developed with Taichung as a protective cover. Israeli civilians, to be protected from surrounding rhombus rockets, instead of sleeping in a bomb shelter every day. It can be said that the arsenal of the Israeli army, there is a considerable amount of equipment. They're all labeled Made in America. Not only arms give money and goods, the United States is also diplomatically committed to sheltering Israel, whether it is the United Nations Security Council or other international occasions. As long as there are sanctions against Israel and condemnation proposals, the United States will almost always stand up without hesitation. Veto. Or go swimming. It can be said that America is Israel. They've created a diplomatic safety net. Make many countries hate Israel, but can't help it. How much the United States loves Israel. Make other allies envious. To put it bluntly, Israel is almost adopted by the United States as its own son. However, Israel also developed embarrassed style. Be tough on the surrounding area. No matter how many people you offend, you have the support of the United States anyway. This led him to engage with the Arab world and the growing hatred in the Islamic world. Arab countries, although later Egypt. Jordan has signed a peace agreement with Israel, but more remains Israel as an eyesore. Iran has even publicly threatened to wipe Israel off the map. Around Israel, there's a potential crisis. Israel has a population of less than 10 million, and its opposite Arab, and the total population of Islamic countries, but with strange traces. Israel is literally 1 against 100. If one day the United States stops protecting Israel, you can imagine how dangerous that situation can be. Israel will be in a situation of 4 faces in an instant. There's the Lebanese Pearl Party up north. There is Hamas in the south ready, launch a rocket rain. In the distance, Iran seeks nuclear weapons and detect various agents. The reason why these threats were suppressed in the past, on the one hand, because of Israel's own military deterrence. On the other hand, it is also the United States beating in the back, shock the surrounding area. Don't let the situation escalate. However, once the United States let go, Israel has lost its biggest umbrella company. The forces around him who hated him. I'm afraid I'll be emboldened immediately. Maybe the situation won't plunge into all-out war right away, but an unprecedented multifaceted attack, almost inevitable. Hezbollah in Lebanon may run out of inventory. Thousands of rockets were fired at Israel. Hamas in the south will also be around the corner. Launch an attack. Iran is likely to take advantage of the opportunity for these organizations, provide more assistance, even launch long-range missiles directly, targeting important targets in Israel. At first, Israel's well-trained defense forces, perhaps with experience and technology, barely withstand the Taichung system, trying to intercept the rockets flying in the sky. But as the attacks came in waves, frontline casualties continue to rise. Israel's defenses will gradually crack. Maybe in a few weeks, Tel Aviv's skyscrapers have been destroyed. And on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the sky was rolling. Gunpowder smoke. The Israeli government is turning to its former allies for help again. I'm afraid all I hear are cold echoes. Don't expect other superpowers to be in a critical moment. Reach out. Russia and China, perhaps it will take the opportunity to expand its power in the Middle East. But they will never be like America. Act as Israel's protector. On the contrary, for self-interest, They are likely to strengthen their relationship with the Arabs, cooperation with Islamic countries, in exchange for oil and geopolitical benefits. As for European countries, at best, it's just a statement calling for peace, providing limited humanitarian assistance, but dare not send troops to set foot in this sea of fire. America is gone. Israel really stands alone. Ask for more. Without America, billions of dollars a year of military personnel will no longer exist. Weapons of the Israeli army, ammunition stocks will soon run out. You know, although Israel has its own military industry, but it has a small land and few resources, it is impossible to support high-intensity warfare alone for a long time. Once the war dragged on, without a steady stream of American logistics, the Israeli army may not be able to continue, let alone the past. The United States also acquiesced to Israel. The United States maintains the only nuclear weapon status in the Middle East. If American hegemony is not there, perhaps soon there will be other Middle Eastern countries. Even Iran is competing to develop nuclear weapons. At that time, Israel can't even maintain its nuclear superiority. It's rumored Israel developed the so-called Samson Plan. It means that when the country is on the verge of extinction, Israel will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons. Die with the enemy. This is the Jewish people, a last resort in a desperate situation. In the past, the United States has tried its best to prevent the situation in the Middle East. Deteriorated to that point, but if America is gone, this final floodgate will also be completely lost. The consequences are unimaginable, not only militarily but also by wolves. Diplomatically, Israel will also come under intense pressure. America is not in the back. The countries of Israel's past, it is bound to be attacked in an international setting. Sanctions, severance, embargoes and other means may be divided into. The Israeli economy is highly dependent on exports. And high-tech industries? Once external markets and technical cooperation are lost, his prosperity will soon be greatly diminished. Can imagine an Israel that has lost American support. I'm afraid I'll be put in the international dock. For Israel, it's hard to imagine a life without America. For decades, the Israeli people have long been, I'm used to having an American backer behind me. When the situation becomes tense, people always believe that the United States would intervene in vortex. It's not going to leave Israel alone. If this belief collapses, social panic and unrest may ensue. Brain drain? Investment withdrawal. Many people may choose to leave this land of right and wrong. Another way to make a living. Israel's future demographic and economic vitality will be affected. So let's just say that Israel has lost U.S. asylum. It's like losing your rope at the edge of a cliff. Below is a raging sea of hatred waiting. Once mighty Israel. Overnight. I'm afraid I'll find myself in a desperate situation. After all, when one country almost offends the whole world, but suddenly lost the only big brother who cared for him, I'm afraid that all that awaits him is the word destruction. After watching Korea, the situation in Taiwan and Israel, can't help but sigh. International politics has always been a jungle where the law of the jungle prevails. For small and vulnerable countries, holding only the thighs of the only superpower, perhaps it is a helpless but realistic choice. It's not without precedent. The Soviet superpower collapsed with a bang. Don't let a group of little brothers who depend on him to live in a desperate situation. However, American hegemony cannot last forever. Once the mountains and rivers change color, these small countries that were once sheltered, where will it go? Korea, Taiwan. Israel is just 3 examples. Instead of waiting for the backers to collapse, it's better to prepare early. Find a way to practice your survival skills. As the saying goes, backers will fall. Everyone can run. In the end, you can only rely on yourself. After all, there is no eternal empire, no umbrella company forever, like a bush under a big tree. I can only pray that the tree will never fall. Otherwise, when the tree capsizes, small shrubs will also be crushed to pieces together.